joy and the pain, I'm making them yours.
Things in the past, things yet unseen, wishes and dreams that are yet to come true. All of my hopes, all of my plans, my heart and my hands are lifted to you.
Lord, I offer my life to you. Everything I've been through, use it for your glory. And Lord, I offer my days to you, lifting my praise to you. That's a pleasing sacrifice. Lord, I offer you my love.
Hello everyone! This is a part 2 of our lesson number 2 entitled Poetry, Creating Picture Through Words. Let us begin. We always tend to talk, but we rarely think about how do we sound like. And by that, what I mean is the type of words we use to convey our message. Do we just use the old plain loud voice to signify our anger? Or do we use irony to show that person how upset we are? The same goes for any other emotions that we may have. Well, let's remember that there are words that can make us listen, such as called the figure of sound. Listening to the words of a poem is like listening to music. Rooted in music, poetry is a song unsung. In a poetry reading, which is a public event, a poem becomes an oral performance or recitation. The sound devices used in a poetry are meant to borrow the reader's ear. Lending one's ear to a poem means your attention has been caught. It means a poem has stirred some emotional effect in you. This makes the poem memorable. That is why a poem needs to be read or recited slowly several times. Now, let's try to read this excerpt of the poem A Peal of Bells, and let's name the sounds it makes. A Peal of Bells, written by Christina G. Rossetti. Strike the bells wantonly, tinkle, tinkle well. Bring me wine, bring me flowers, ring the silver bell. All my lamps burn scented oil, hang on laden orange trees, whose shadowed foliage is the foil to golden lamps and oranges. Heap my golden plates with fruit, golden fruit, fresh plucked and ripe. Strike the bells and breathe the pipe. Shut out showers from summer hours, silence that complaining lute. Shut out thinking, shut out pain, from hours that cannot come again. A Peal of Bells by Christina G. Rossetti. If we're going to look back at our poem, it is very apparent the sound of the bells it is trying to convey to us from the terms strike, tinkle, and ring. Those words does not just justify the ringing of the bells on the story or in the poem itself, but it also tried to tell us how that bell rang or sounded like. Well, the strike is somewhat shows us a much more impactful type of sound instead of a tinkle. Another one is the ringing of the bells, which is somewhat much more neutral in terms of the tinkle and the strike. You get it? Now, there's a little activity that I would like you to do. With your mouth closed, try the sound of om, om. Feel the vibrations it creates in your body. Is actually a three-letter word, A, U, and M when it sounds. Such is the power of that sound, and here's a little story about it. Om, the mother of all sound. The Upanishad, the Hindu sacred book, regards Om as a supreme syllable, the mother of all sound. Om's meaning is pregnant belly. It is thus a word of creation, a life-giving word. The Arabic is a similar meaning, which is mother. Each of the letters of represents a mental state. The A or the Ah is the waking state or the external world. U is a dreaming state or our inner consciousness, and M is the deep sleep state. Now, why do you think we need to know all about this or the mother of all sounds? Well, for starters, it is the very basis or foundation of the term sound or the sounds that we have been hearing or creating. So it is very important for us to know where it came from. Now remember, every word has a different taste in the mouth and on the tongue. Just as our hands can feel if a surface is rough or smooth, so do our mouth and tongue. Let's also remember that sounds aids in highlighting the message of the poem. It uncovers the poet's attitude or his mindset, and also builds the poem's mood or emotion. Let's all remember that sounds aids in building the poem's mood or emotion. It also uncovers the poet's attitude or mindset, and it highlights the message of the poem. Also, the text of the poem has a texture. The word texture comes from the Latin term textura or to weave. In this case, textures refers to the word's breath and vocal quality as it passes through the vocal cords, teeth, and tongue. Once again, sounds have its own textures, and the way we speak comes from the texture that that sound has. For example, let's try to sound check the words hush, shut up, and quiet. All of those words have the same goal, which is the reduction of noise, but they fall differently in our ears. Hush is soft and soothing, while shut up is the opposite. In quiet, the speaker is calm and cool, in contrast to the abrupt and imposing attitude of the shut up. The listener might be frightened and keep quiet, or might just keep up the noise because the speaker does not project much authority. Now let us talk about the sound devices in poetry. From the Greek phoneme, or sound made, a phoneme is a sound unique to a word to differentiate it from other words. While sounds do not have meanings by themselves, in writing, sounds can clarify, enhance, or point to the meaning of the word. In using sounds, you're making your writings unforgettable, like the lyrics in the song that get stuck in your head, or the last song syndrome. Now, we can use these different terms when doing a sound check of a poem. First and foremost is the onomatopoeia, or the words that imitate the sound they describe. For example, is the bang, the boom, the ring, the hiss, the buzz, the screech, and the squeak. And the purpose of this is to provide the immediate name for a sound. And when at loss for words, we can also use the sound instead. Second one is alliteration, which is the repetition of the sound of the first consonant in the same line of a poem. An example of it is seashells, seashells by the seashore. See, all of the lines, almost all of the words in this line, almost all of the words used on this line, almost all of the words used on this starts with the letter S. Next one is Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers, which uses a lot of letter P's on its words, particularly on the first part of the word. The third one is assonance, which is the repetition of the sound of vowel in stressed syllables or words. For example is it beats, it sweeps. What is it? Well, the sound of the vowel that was stressed in here is the E, or the beats, it sweeps, right? Next up is so old it goes so far back, so old that no one knows. The vowel that was being repeated on this one is the O, or the sound of O. Well, the purpose of assonance is to highlight the meaning or to set the mood of the poem. It also adds the rhythm. It also adds rhythm and musicality, which is a much more subtle compared to alliteration. Next, and the fourth one is the consonance, which is the successive repetition of the sound of consonants within the phrase or sentence. Well, the assonance is for the vowels, while the consonance is for the consonants. For example, it creeps and beeps while you sleep. creeps, beeps, sleep. Put the black sack in the back. The consonants here is the eeps on creeps, the eeps on beeps, and the eep on sleep. While on the second is on the black, sack, and back. Now, the purpose of this is also to add a rhythm and musicality and also to create a special mood. The last one is dissonance, which is the intentional use of words that create harsh or clashing sound. An example of which is let's get ready to rumble and your eyes pierce my soul, particularly on the words rumble and pierce. It creates an angry, discordant, or conflicted atmosphere. Let's go back to our example earlier. Instead of using let's get ready to rumble, what if the announcer on a boxing match just used the term start? Then you as a crowd or as a person who heard it is somewhat, not that pumped up compared to the term let's get ready to rumble, since this word really sets the mood to you that hey, a conflict is about to happen since the term rumble is used. Once again, the sound devices that we can use are onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, consonance, and dissonance. Now let's talk about rhythm or the flow of sound in poetry. Poetic sound devices are the literary forms that endow a written work with rhythm. From the Greek term rhythmos or calculated flow, rhythm is the heartbeat of the arrangement of words. And there are four general principles when writing the sounds. The first one is rhyming. It is achieved through repetition of sound-alike or spell-alike words. Next one is repetition. It creates a musical pattern to a stanza, just like on our alliteration. Next up is euphony, which makes the sound flow harmoniously and pleasantly. And last is the cacophony, that makes the sound flow harshly and discordantly. On euphony, you can have those sound devices that gives us this rhythm or musicality. For example, is alliteration, assonance, and consonance. But on cacophony, since it makes the sound flow harshly and discordantly, then you can have the dissonance there. Now let's read the excerpt of a classic poem entitled The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe and try to identify the examples of onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, consonance, and dissonance used in it. Ready? Let's begin. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of some one gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door, only this and nothing more." Now let's try to analyze the sound devices present on this poem. On the line, "Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary." On the line, "weak and weary," we've used the alliteration. Next up, "while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door." We use the sound device onomatopoeia. How come? Nodded, nearly napping. Suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. So there comes the sound of the tapping or the rapping, just like this one. See? Onomatopoeia. Now let's talk about the rhymes or the rhyming present on this excerpt. We have three particular rhymes present on this one: the dreary and the weary, the lore, door, and more, and also the napping, rapping, and tapping. Both A or red and C or green are called internal rhyme. They've been called like that since a part of the rhyming word is inside the line, while the rhyme letter B or the more, door, and lore are all at the end, thus it is called the end rhyme. Did you get this? The internal rhyme, which is inside, or a part of it is inside or in the middle of the line, and the end rhyme, which is all in the end of the rhyme. Now, Let's remember that sounds are important, so let your voice be heard. And best part for me to listen to your voice is if you could do this activity. On a short bond paper, analyze and give the sound device used at the following poems: Night by William Blake and All Things Will Die by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Night by William Blake. The sun descending in the west, the evening star does shine. The birds are silent in their nest, and I must seek for mine. The moon, like a flower in heaven's high bower, with silent delight sits and smiles on the night. Second, All Things Will Die by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Clearly the blue river chimes in its flowing. Under my eye, warmly and broadly, the south winds are blowing over the sky, yet all things must die. The stream will cease to flow, the wind will cease to blow, the clouds will cease to fleet, the heart will cease to beat, for all things must die. Now that you've heard the two poems that you're going to analyze, I'll be giving to you the remainder of our discussion, the remaining time of our discussion for you to do it, and yeah, good luck on this one. Here's the references I've used, and also once again, I'm still using the book of Miss Lorna Q. Israel entitled Creative Nonfiction under the Vibal Publishing. Yeah, thanks for Slides Carnival and the photographs of Unsplash for this particular presentation, and thanks everyone for watching, and see you again on the part 3 and the last part of our discussion. Bye bye!